Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rachel Galagos.
Kim Bonsalar.
Grant Alexander.
So we are just here to do our normal, keep you guys all in the loop on what's going on in real estate and in mortgages, and have a little fun conversation on this great Friday morning. So
Absolutely.
Yep.
let's start with you, Grant. Tell us a little bit about what interest rates did in April.
Yeah. So interest rates in April, we really saw it kind of level out, maybe even like a slight improvement. So we're still seeing rates on, purchase and refinances for a 30-year fixed conventional in the high twos, low threes. They're really most of the rates that I'm seeing right now are right between like 2.9 and 3.1. So they're kind of sitting right in that level. That's on a 30-year. and 15, you can maybe get a little bit lower, but it hasn't been as volatile as it has in the past. So we haven't seen any real big jumps. It's not, it seems to be really leveling off. And there just isn't really anything that I've heard or seen that lets us think that there's going to be something that happens here in the near future that makes it adjust one way or the other. So right now I'm expecting it to stay fairly consistent. But one thing that is true out there right now is there's 7 million mortgage holders that still could refinance. Even though we might not be at the all-time lows, it's still historically very low right now.
Right. Yeah.
And there's 7 million people that have mortgages out there that would benefit from a refinance that haven't done it yet. So we still are doing a fair amount of refinances, a lot of cash out refinances because equity's at an all-time high. So they're paying off high interest debt and things like that, getting rid of mortgage insurance. I had a client I'm working on right now that bought his home last year. We were able to get an appraisal waiver with a value of $60,000 higher than what he bought it for last year. And got rid of and went from an FHA loan to a conventional loan and got rid of mortgage insurance and saving over $200 a month. So
that's insane.
Yeah. So there's a lot of skepticism like, wait, it's only been a year, but it's just what the market's done. The supply and demand is still a major, major issue.
For sure.
Not sure if you guys saw, but I posted a graph a couple days ago regarding how many homes had been purchased within each decade from 1930.
No built. Homes built, wasn't it?
What did I say? Purchased?
I think you said homes purchased. Yeah.
Oh,
homes built. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
I had it in my head, right?
Yeah.
I said it all. Homes built between 1930 and 2019 per decade. And 5.8 million houses were built between 2010 and 2019. That hasn't been that low since the 1930s.
And it wasn't just like a small decrease.
No,
it was
in the previous decade, there was 27 million homes built. So we're really seeing from the collapse of 2008 where builders were kind of left high and dry, where you saw like maybe neighborhoods that were half built, where houses weren't even completed, things like that. There was this lull and they really didn't start rebuilding them until like halfway through the decade. So like, 2015. And right now we're really hurting because it just shows how backed up we are on home building, and not to mention millennials are hitting that home buying stage and really coming into the market. And, cost of lumber in the last year has like quadrupled. So there's a lot of issues that are going to cause, prices and stuff to stay high. I think we're going to see a little bit of a leveling off, but so, if you're going to stay in your home, you really want to look at a refinance. The average time we see for the cost of a refinance, how long it'll take you to recoup those costs, is literally sometimes less than a year, but 1 to 2 years. And so if you're going to live in your home that long, that much,
it's worth it. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, taking a look at the whole, home building aspect of things, if you're looking at the decade as a whole, you've got the first, 2009, it's 2009 to 2020, correct? or 2009 to 2019. So 2009 is when we're in the middle of our recession. Hardly any homes are being built. It takes until almost 2015 to really start to see that like normalize, right? So that's half of a decade, like you said, where hardly any homes are being built. Well, then you've got 4 years of like steady, normal home building rates. And now we're looking at building a home being twice as much money as it was 5 years ago or 8 years ago because of the cost of lumber. It's like a whole decade lost of new construction. And
they were saying in 2019, or wait, no, scratch that. Early 2020, that the cost of lumber to build a 200 square foot deck was about $963. That cost today is $3,400, right? So it's massive. And the thing is, people are still doing it. I think it's somewhat crazy. I got quotes on my deck and I was like, I don't feel like I'm very smart if I choose to do this right now. It was just absolutely crazy. And I already have a deck. Like I just needed it resurface, new deck boards and railing, and it was like 10 times the cost of what I paid to build my deck 5 years ago.
It's insanity. Now, are you seeing, what are some creative things that you're seeing on purchase agreements that are helping buyers get their offer accepted?
Well, I think time to close and possession is a big thing. A lot of people, when it comes to listing their house, they're in the same boat as you when it comes to buying, right? They're going to be up against some competition in most cases. So giving them that extra day's possession is going to be a major thing, because it gives them the capability of like, okay, I have 60 days to find that next house, and I don't have to jump on the first thing I see or get crazy with my offer. But time to close is really important. If you can get appraisal waivers and you have assets and you can get a lot of stuff done up front, like our average close time from the point we have a purchase agreement to the point we're clear to close is about 11 days, which is really fast, right?
Yeah.
And so, if we can get that out of the way, the lending part, because we understand that the mortgage part is not the fun part of the transaction, right? If we get that out of the way quicker, it just makes for a smoother transaction, and it helps that seller have a level of confidence, like moving forward, or even gives them maybe some extra time to find that next house,
for sure,
or not have to put a contingent offer in.
Yeah. I feel like as a listing agent, let's say my client lists their home and they're listing a contingent on home of choice. If we get a non-contingent buyer that comes in and says, I can close in 15 days, but I'll give you the extra time after close, that's more beneficial than saying, let's just close normal and I'll give you 60 days possession. I would rather, and I know that there's some, tricks to it as far as lending goes, because there can only be, the buyer can only give so many days possession before it's considered like investment property. But let's say you're going to give the seller 45 days possession after close. Well, if we can close in 15 days and you'll give me 60 days possession, I'd rather do that for my seller, because then they can write offers that are non-contingent. Now, keep in mind, just because your home is under contract, you're still a contingent buyer. You're a contingent upon closing.
Yeah,
you can start. So if you can start writing offers that are not contingent at all because you've closed on your home, you're going to be a much stronger buyer. And I'd rather go with a buyer that's saying, hey, we'll close as quick as possible and then give you extra possession time rather than less possession time, but closing normal. So, yeah.
Well, the other thing is that I think is important for people to start considering is, so like where I grew up, it was not abnormal to have to drive 25 miles to get to like a major grocery store, or, to go to a mall. It was 45 miles away. Right. So I think one thing to consider when you're out there and you're looking and you're up against massive amounts of offers is consider looking outside of the greater Grand Rapids, Holland area. Like look at what 25 minutes out looks like.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know that's a lot for people that still have to travel to their jobs. But I think
Yeah.
you need to consider it, especially if you are working from home a lot, which a lot of people are, and maybe that's good. It's going to be forever or for the foreseeable future. Is you really need to start looking in other areas that are going to be a little less competitive. I know I have like 4 transactions on the east side of the state, and what I get in those purchase agreements, I don't think exist much here in West Michigan. 3% seller concessions, 4% seller concessions, stuff like that. I'm like, if I had a client buying in the Grand Rapids area, it would be really hard to see that getting accepted.
We just had a listing up in Fountain, which is about 10 miles east of Ludington.
Okay.
And we got multiple offers on them, but almost every single one asked for seller concessions, which you would never see here.
No. And
so
it's something to consider. Like, I think if you've grown up in the area, I know I didn't grow up here, but I'm somewhat spoiled at it now of how close I am to everything. Right.
Yeah.
But for me driving, to be honest with you, I live in Granville. So to get to the East Beltline, it takes me 25 minutes to get there anyways. So going a little north, south, east, or west, 25 minutes isn't really that big a deal.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. All right. We talked about, I was going to say too, we talk a lot of times about being creative and putting our offers in. And some of the things that we've seen too, that are kind of creative, but don't affect the bottom line that much, are things like the buyer says, well, I'll pay some of the seller's closing costs. Or the buyer will say, I'll pay for the, well inspections. Typically the seller would buy. If he says that, a lot of times the seller will see that and say, wow, that's kind of a nice thing. Wasn't looking forward to doing that anyway. So if you're willing to do it.
Yeah. And really what it is it's
a little thing that,
it's protecting the appraisal amount, right? So if you're going in at if you're going in at 200 and saying, I'll pay $2,000 of the seller's closing costs or inspections or anything like that, that's $2,000 that you don't have to worry about whether it's going to appraise, instead of if you went in at 202, right? I mean, it's not that big of a difference, but it makes it helps. It's no different than if you did a $2,000 appraisal gap or, so.
And I think it's important too that we think sometimes we're like, oh, I'm going to get creative on this. Is sometimes we can make the mistake of assuming what the seller wants and needs, right? And so sometimes it's as easy as asking, what are they looking for, right? I don't want to go in just assuming they want 60 days possession and me to pay their closing costs. They might have specific wants and needs, and it's worth asking to make sure, instead of just putting an offer why didn't they take this? Well, that they didn't care about that, right?
Yeah. Your buyer's agent should be calling the listing agent and saying, what's most important to the seller? What can we do that's going to help strengthen our offer? Those conversations should be had.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep. So interest rate wise, I think, we can kind of expect more of the same for now, barring any major events happening that are going to cause that. I will bring up one thing that we didn't talk about is this possibility of some first-time homebuyer down payment assistance stuff coming out from the government. We watched it. I think some of it's kind of scary because adding more buyers to the market is not going to help our problem we have right now.
Right.
Well, and there's also the stuff going on with the 1031 exchange. Biden's trying to get rid of the 1031 exchange and also get rid of the stepped up basis tax.
Okay.
So actually, we just were notified in our association an article that was written on NAR's website saying that NAR is actually advocating, saying, "Hey, these things are going to hurt our housing market."
If they get rid of the 1031 exchange, the commercial is going to get wrecked more than they already are. As far as office buildings and stuff like that, they're already hurting there. So 1031 exchanges, it's like, okay, well, I'm never going to sell my property because I'm not gonna, if you're not going to give me if I'm just going to get taxed on any profit and I can't put it into something else.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see how that turns out. But I think the article said that real estate between residential and commercial makes up 1/5 of our economy. So you drive that real estate market to the ground, it's going to affect the rest of the economy. So we'll see how that plays out.
Our income gets taxed like 6 different times already. So like the proceeds on an investment of your primary residence and capital gains and stuff like that getting taxed at that rate, it's gonna hurt, and it's really gonna hurt inventory if you start messing with capital gains because well, I'm definitely not selling if I'm going to get taxed on that newfound income. So
yeah. All right, Grant. Well, we appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great weekend, and we will chat with you next month.
You too. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for everything, Grant.
Yep. See you. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's look over our numbers.
Numbers.
All right. Here's what we got for April. So last year compared to this year, sold. We talked about, I said, it looks like it's catching up, right? We're getting it. April was definitely a better month than March.
Absolutely. Pretty significant, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that shows that we're kind of headed into that spring market, and that's helping with the, inventory problem a little bit, not much,
a little bit,
but
it's still.
Yeah. I think our average days on market is also a reflection that our inventory is extremely low. It is half of what it was last year. So that's 22 days is insane if you think about the fact that that's an average, right? So that's also calculating in. So I would say up until a year ago, right? We live in an area where it's a very mixed as far as price points. We live in an area where there's $1 million, $2 million homes on the water, and literally across the street, there can be a $200,000 home. But in the past, those $1 million to $2 million homes, would average closer to probably 80 to 180 days on the market. Right. There's far fewer buyers for that price point. Right. So they take longer to sell. Also, new construction in the last 2-3 years up until this year, they would, builders would list the home maybe halfway through building it, right? So it might sit on the market for 8 months, 6 months until it's a little bit closer to completion, where buyers don't are more apt to write an offer on something because they can see it and know what it looks like and things like that. And we're not seeing that anymore. We're seeing houses that are going on the market, whether they're $1 million to $2 million homes, are gone within 30 days, and new construction homes that are getting listed when they're not even completed are going pretty much right away, because people are reverting to these new construction homes instead of buying a used home because there's less competition for them, but they're still going quickly. So I think that plays a huge factor into why our days on market has dropped so significantly.
Right. And even that being said, those $1 million homes and the new builds do take, a little bit longer. So in other words, the vast majority of homes that are on the market, because those are a smaller percentage, the vast majority are actually selling in less than 20 days.
I would say from what I see, most homes are selling in 7 days or less.
Yeah.
7 days or less are under contract.
In fact, many of the homes that are getting listed are saying, okay, we're listing it today. 3 days from now, it's going to be pending. That's just,
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so average sale price. So you and I talked a little bit. We've got a 25% increase from last year. That is bananas.
That's pretty significant. Yeah.
It's bananas. So say a little bit about what you said to me earlier with the data that you found between list price and sold price.
Right. Typically the list price, the average sold price is a little bit less than the average list price in our market. And we've seen this for the most part, but now these numbers are kind of bearing it out across the board, where April's average list price was $336,761, but the average sold price was $342,589. So in other words, whatever it's getting listed for, it's selling for more than.
Yes.
So
yes, and we knew that, but the fact that this is the first month that we've seen that the average sold price has now surpassed the average list price. That's insane.
We've seen it. Yeah, we've seen that's a pretty common thing, in a segment of the market, but now across the board, it's bearing out to be true. So that's significant.
It is significant.
That's in the sense that that doesn't usually happen.
No, I don't think I've ever seen it happen. So.
Right.
All right. Well, that's our numbers.
Yeah, and like we said, I mean, April to March is a significant improvement.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing more stuff pop on the market. Grant gave us I think a real encouraging word, in the sense that he sees that the interest rates are stabilized, and they're going to remain stabilized over the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So that should calm people's maybe anxieties or concerns, in the sense that, wow, because everybody knows it's a volatile market. But when he's telling us, well, yeah, it's a volatile market because our inventory is low, but our interest rates are stable and they're going to remain stable. That should give a sense of comfort to people that are saying, okay, maybe it's time for me to make my move. Because
I think another thing to keep in mind for people too that are kind of on the verge of like, hey, we're thinking about maybe doing something, but we're not quite sure, especially if you're not a buyer that needs to sell something, you got to start your pre-approval process, because, and we just ran into this with the property up north. We listed a property, and I think we had 4, maybe 5 people, reach out, whether it be through, websites or the sign or whatever, saying, I'm super interested. We've been keeping an eye on the market, and this one is perfect for us. And it's like, okay, well, do you have a pre-approval? No, I don't. Okay, well, here's some lenders. You need to call a lender and get your pre-approval done. We can't even show it. We're not going to show it without a pre-approval when we've got 20 other buyers that are looking at it that are pre-approved. Your offer is not going to even be considered. So there's no point in showing a property without a pre-approval in your hand.
No.
Or what if we show it and you're only pre-approved for, $20,000 less than the property is actually listed for? So if you are thinking that you want to enter the market, but nothing has piqued your interest yet, get your pre-approval. Grant said rates are not volatile. So if you get your pre-approval now, it's good for usually 90 days. That's 3 months. You've got it. You don't, just because you have a pre-approval in hand doesn't mean that you need to go start looking at houses today. But if you know there's a chance that you might want to enter the market, get your pre-approval. So that way, when something hits the market that you're like, this is the house for us, you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about it. So
and because like we said, once they hit the market, they're not there long. So if you're not ready to move forward on it, you'll miss your opportunity. So get ready. Get your pre-approval.
Some sellers in today's market are even saying, and as far as the not showing it without a pre-approval, that's more our policy. But there are some sellers that are saying, we're not going to let buyers through unless they're pre-approved. Because you got to remember that these sellers, they're literally having to leave their house for days, right? The first 3 days they're on the market. It is not fair to a seller to make them pack up all of their kids, all of their pets, clean their house, and leave for a buyer that doesn't even have a pre-approval from a lender, and maybe might not even get pre-approved for that home. So get your pre-approval, even if you're just thinking about buying a house. It's not gonna make a huge dent in your credit or anything like that. If it needs to be updated in 3 months, it's not gonna affect you. So that's kind of where I stand with.
It's the smart thing to do.
For sure. Yeah. So. All right. Well, we have our next episode of Meet the Zeal hitting Monday. Very excited about it. So keep your eyes peeled. But all right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right. Have a good May.
See ya.